this has to be a rural vision that's not developed in Rue de la Loi or even in national capitals, but that it really involves citizens. And this is something that we've been looking at, hopefully an opportunity that really helps to get citizens' voices into this exercise. I've only got 10 minutes, so it's a very quick overview, but we can provide more details later for anyone who wants. I was really struck just now listening to you, Matti, by the concept of breaking the bubbles. And I think that's something we really want to do here, to reach out, and the concept of well-being. And we want to hear what rural citizens' own concept of what they want for their well-being is. So what is this? What we've been working on is a package of material that anybody could download and use, that gives a common format, including explanations, guidance, visuals, so that any group anywhere could run a little session, a little workshop, maybe in the context of a parish council meeting, a scout group meeting, or young farmers, local action group, any rural group, whoever, a school, parent, teacher association, could run a little session to look at their own situation, their own area defined as they define it, to look at their vision for their area, and then to feed it back in a consistent format, so that we can take that and incorporate it into the rural vision process. And we've designed it very much thinking about complementing the online questionnaire, which of course is obviously for individuals, and then the foresight exercise, which we've been involved in today and yesterday, which brings the sort of the stakeholder groups in. But to complement that and to really reach out to local groups. And one of the things we'd be particularly keen on collecting is local stories, because stories, I mean, narrative, I think we all know that that's something that makes something come alive. It's much more powerful than statistics. And it's also a way of identifying innovation and good practice, and helping people get something known more widely. So it's quite a big ask. What were our key criteria? We knew that it had to be really clear and simple, easy to understand, easy to run, short. If it's going to be downloaded, it needs to be something that doesn't require expert knowledge, either on hosting, facilitating, or on the subject and the policy. It has to really use normal everyday language to reach normal everyday people. And we need to provide enough guidance so that anybody can pick it up and run with it. It needs to be short, because most people aren't going to want to consecrate a huge amount of time for this, which means that it's got to have enough framing to focus on the vision, rather than digressing into a big discussion of the current situation. But we also need to really avoid prejudging or channeling, so that people can really get their own views across. And it needs to be flexible enough to adapt to different groups or situations, because the issues of concern to different groups will be different. But of course, whatever we offer is only going to work if people want to do it. So it has to be an appealing and attractive and available format, hopefully fun, or at least intriguing and interesting enough for people to want to do it. And it has to give some added value for the group, as well as offering something to us for the rural vision process, something for them to take away and to take forward in their own situation. And as I said before, a consistent format, so that we're able actually to take it and incorporate it. So what have we come up with so far? At the moment, our prototype is still too long, and we're looking at the possibility of offering two variants, one that's really short and completely standalone, and another one that's a bit longer, that could be used by groups who are a bit more familiar, or perhaps a bit more engaged in policy. I think Paul might talk more about that later. So an introduction to get people there to what they're doing. Possibility of an introductory video from someone in AGRI, or maybe using some clips from the president to introduce the idea of the rural vision exercise and why what's important. Then a little bit of time plotting the rural area today, and there's a visual canvas which I'll show you in a minute of what we're envisaging for people to use to plot the characteristics of the area today. Then we would introduce the concept of drivers and things that are likely to influence and shift the rural area over the next 20 years. Will sound very familiar, of course, to all of us. And the four main ones that we were thinking of offering, building on the mega trends and this sort of thing, but leaving space for a group to add others, would be demographic change, technological change, climate change, and globalization, localization. And then look at how those drivers would be likely to shift the characteristics, and thinking about where they would like to be, what their ideal vision would be, and where the significant gaps are likely to appear, both in terms of the greatest impact and the greatest extent. Again, picking up as you'll recognize some of the foresight elements. And then closing off with thinking about the enabling conditions that they would need to close gaps and to make the most of their opportunities and potential, recording those on a common harvest sheet that they could send back in. And then also some next steps to help them maybe think about what they might like to do. And throughout this, we're not so much focusing on policy, but on the enabling conditions, what they would need in order to realize potential. So we've been thinking about the supporting materials, so the overall design and a script with some flexibility built in for size of group and type of group and time available, that sort of thing. Some downloadable visuals, and I'm going to go and show you those in just a minute. The visual canvas, driver cards, a harvest sheet, things like a poster to help a participatory session, the standard things that I'm sure you all know about. Listen with attention, speak with intention, all ideas are valuable, that sort of thing. And then a particular package for the host, or practical information on the materials that will be needed, tips on how to host a meeting, how to feed the input back, and also some more contact related background for the host on the drivers and maybe some of the policy. So here now you can see the visual canvas that we have come up with so far. So moving from a poor situation in the middle to a good situation at the outside. And the idea would be that for each of these groups of characteristics, they would plot where they think they are. And they can, of course, focus on the ones that they think are most important. It's not necessary or even appropriate or possible that every group would look at all 8 in detail, and they might pick up aspects of each. So there's social inclusion and vitality, the sort of caring community aspect, income, work and jobs, basic goods, availability, affordability, quality of food and energy, digital and technology, again, the availability, affordability, quality, climate change, the impact on the area of climate change, and climate change, the impact of the area on climate change, a general environmental one looking at biodiversity, pollution, water availability, that sort of thing, and then infrastructure and services. So again, these are all very familiar from the things that we've been talking about in the last 2 days. This particular choice and grouping was inspired from the SDGs, donut economics, well-being indicators, including the OECDs, and the way we've structured the questionnaire. So that would be how they would plot where they think they are. Then we would introduce the drivers with downloadable cards like this that could be put on tables. We've been thinking about it as something that would be done physically, but we're also contemplating the idea of a virtual option, maybe using Miro as we've explored today. And so these could be used digitally just as much as physically. This would then lead to a second plot on the visual canvas of where these drivers are likely to take the rural area, and then a consideration of the gaps. And then ultimately, after having looked at the enabling conditions, a harvest sheet to send in with details of the group and when it met, the biggest gaps between the likely and desired future for which characteristics and what would be needed to close the gap, the greatest potentials, and as I mentioned before, collecting inspiring stories, which we would hope to be able to feed into the communication and or the conference. So I'm just going to finish now with some questions for you. So I think what we'd really like to know is, do you think this is of interest? What are the ways in which we can reach out to really get to people and hopefully get information from people? What can we do to improve it? What other sorts of support material would be needed? And then particularly, because this is really a joint and collaborative effort, and we all know that sitting in Rue de la Loire, or even just along where the contact point are, neither DG AGRI nor the contact point can do this on our own. Would you or your organizations be prepared to help translate material, to publicize it, maybe even to organize some workshops, or perhaps to help collate responses?